You know, seahorses, they're just one of those creatures, right? So enchanting, so charismatic, they almost feel like they're straight out of a fairy tale. But in the mangrove estuaries of Brazil, these animals are facing some very real challenges. And to protect them, scientists first had to solve a really tricky puzzle.
So it all boils down to this one kind of strange question. How in the world do you figure out what a delicate, threatened animal is eating without hurting it in the process? Solving that puzzle is exactly what we're going to dive into. So let's zoom in on one particular species, the long-snout seahorse, or Hippocampus reedi. Figuring out its daily life, what it eats, where it hangs out, is absolutely crucial if we're going to have any hope of protecting it. But just getting a peek into that secret life, well, that's the first major hurdle.
Okay, so traditionally, if scientists wanted to study an animal's diet, the method was, well, it wasn't pretty. It often involved dissection. And obviously, that is just not an option for a species that's already vulnerable. They needed a whole new playbook, a way to get the info without sacrificing the very creature they were trying to save.
And this is where things get really clever. Researchers in Brazil came up with a brilliant, totally non-lethal technique to find out exactly what was on the seahorse menu.
The process they figured out is kind of like a tiny aquatic medical procedure. It's amazing. First, they gently capture the seahorse. Then they use a natural anesthetic made from clove oil just to calm it down. Next, they use a tiny tube to gently flush its stomach with fresh water, which makes the seahorse spit up its last meal. After they collect the sample, the seahorse gets to recover in some nice, fresh seawater, and then it's released right back in the exact same spot it was found. It's just a remarkable, super gentle technique.
But the big question is, did it work? Was it truly safe for them? Well, the proof is right here in the numbers. Out of the 170 seahorses they studied using this method, an incredible 65 of them were spotted later on, just living their lives perfectly healthy. Some were even seen reproducing. This was it, the definitive proof that this gentle approach was a massive success.
So, the method worked beautifully. Scientists could finally ask the seahorse what it had for lunch. And let me tell you, the answer was not what anyone expected.
I mean, think about it. You'd assume, based on other similar species, that they'd be chowing down on tiny little shrimp and maybe some baby fish, right? That's the logical guess. But the data told a completely different story.
The data was a huge surprise. Okay, sure, tiny crustaceans called copepods were definitely on the menu. They were found in over 91% of the samples. But the real shocker was nematoda. We're talking about tiny little worms. They showed up in almost 87% of the seahorses and made up nearly a quarter of everything they ate. This was a massive discovery. It tells us that seahorses aren't really picky eaters. They're generalists, probably just eating whatever's easiest to find.
Okay, so we know what they eat, but that's only half the story, isn't it? Where they live, their home, turns out to be just as important as their diet. And that leads us to the second big piece of this puzzle.
To really get why their habitat is so critical, you have to understand this one word: hold fast. See, seahorses are not strong swimmers at all, so they use those amazing prehensile tails of theirs to grab onto things to stay in one place. You can seriously think of it like their own personal armchair, a comfy, safe spot where they can just chill, hide from predators, and wait for lunch to drift by.
So, what makes for the best armchair in the estuary?
Well, research from 2023 gives us an answer that is just crystal clear. A full 50%, half of them, were found holding on to fallen mangrove branches. Another 20% were clinging right onto the living mangrove roots. The message couldn't be any clearer.
And this, right here, is the crucial link. The whole complex structure of mangrove branches and roots provides the perfect network of holdfasts for them. It's simple. No mangroves means no safe place for a seahorse to live. Their survival isn't just about the water, it's about the forest that's growing right in it. So now, let's zoom out, because the story of this one seahorse in its mangrove home, well, it's just one part of a much larger and much more urgent conservation story for all of Brazil's seahorses.
A massive systematic review from 2025 looked at all the research, and wow, it uncovered a huge gap in what we know. We actually know a lot about our friend H. reedi. It's been the star of over 200 studies. But for Brazil's other two threatened species, H. patagonicus and H. af erectus, there are barely a dozen studies combined, and you just can't protect what you don't understand.
And the threats that all of them are facing are immense. That same review identified the biggest dangers. And would you look at what's number one? habitat destruction, with a special shout out to mangroves. See? What we learn from studying that one species applies to all of them. And that's on top of all the other pressures, from fishing, the illegal pet trade, and even disturbances from tourism.
So after all this science, from gently flushing stomachs to mapping out their favorite hangouts, what does it all mean for the future? Well, it actually gives us a really clear roadmap for how to protect them.
And this brings us to a really powerful idea in conservation. Seahorses are what's known as a flagship species. Basically, because they're so charismatic and everybody loves them, they can act as ambassadors for their entire home. If you can get people excited about saving the seahorse, you can generate the support you need to protect the whole mangrove forest, which, of course, benefits countless other species too.
And that really leaves us with this final thought. This whole journey started with a simple question about a seahorse's lunch, but it ended with this profound revelation about how interconnected everything is. It proved that to save this magical little fish, we have to save its forest. So the real question isn't just about what the seahorse needs, it's about what else is depending on that same vibrant, vital ecosystem.